Hey, Beyond the Code listeners, welcome to episode 91. Today I'm joined by Erin West. And if you remember, Erin is a repeat offender on our podcast. She was actually here way back when in episode 28. So it's been a while. And Erin's been up to some really amazing things. If you remember from our previous episode, she had recently founded Operation Shamrock, a nonprofit that focuses on educating and stopping the massive scamdemic that's plaguing us all. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to hear about it from Erin today. And she's really done and is doing some phenomenal work. So make sure to listen in and to do whatever you can to support Erin and to support Operation Shamrock. Another thing I want to just briefly grab your attention on is something that I never have ever spoken about before, but it's really important for me to talk about. This whole Beyond the Code podcast thing, I really just do it for fun. I love interviewing people and bringing their stories to you. I don't make any money from doing this, but what I would like to do is spread the good word. So if you could follow, subscribe, share, like my LinkedIn posts, tell your friends about how much you love the podcast, it would really help me to get the word out, grow my listener base. And I know I really enjoy creating this content, and I know that you probably enjoy listening to it because you're here. So thanks and enjoy this episode with Erin. Welcome to Beyond the Code, the podcast where industry experts and brilliant legal minds discuss the impact of new emerging technologies. I'm your host, Yitzi Hammer, a lawyer and tech enthusiast. Join us as we explore the legal, regulatory, and ethical issues surrounding AI, blockchain, and more. Get ready to go beyond the code and stay ahead of the game.
Thank you so much for having me back on your podcast. It's great to be here. My name's Erin West. I am a former local prosecutor in Santa Clara County, California. I was inundated by victims who had lost all of their money in transnational organized crime scams against them. So ultimately, I retired to fight this full time, and I started a nonprofit called Operation Shamrock, where we believe the way forward is to educate, mobilize, and disrupt the scammers behind the thefts of a generation's worth of wealth from the United States and other countries around the world.
And when you constantly talk about this is a scamdemic, and I didn't until I spoke to you and until I heard you speaking about it so frequently, I didn't really realize how widespread it is. But since we chatted, I've discovered. I think I told you at the time that my grandmother was fell to one of these scams, but also just like so many people in close circles, like my parents' good friends who, I thought were not thought, like who are very intelligent people. And I never would have thought would have fell for something like this, fell for these elaborate scams. We call them romance scams. It doesn't always have romance involved. It's, often just somebody who, you feel that you very much trust. And it's kind of like a layer upon layer. You think recently somebody reached out to me. He thought that he had all this money. He gave me access to his account again, which he probably shouldn't have done. But then I see that he has all these like fake tokens there, where the token is like the name of a real token. It's showing a fake value, but there's actually no liquidity to back this token up. It doesn't have any actual tangible value. So, um, basically, like I said, like I do definitely acknowledge that this is a real global scamdemic, and it is global in nature. Why don't you explain to me a little bit on the global aspect, like where it's coming from? I never understood to what degree this is institutionalized almost. So I keep seeing these videos that you're putting out with, boots on the ground in Myanmar and other places in East Asia. So tell me a little bit about what it is that we're seeing here.
Right. That is the jaw-dropping piece of this is not coming from small groups that are holed up in a hotel room somewhere. This is coming from massive compounds in a very industrialized, systematic way. It's been building for over 5 years relatively unimpeded. And so what it's allowed is these primarily Chinese crime bosses to entrench themselves all over Southeast Asia. And the more money that came in, the more they were able to build more infrastructure. And so what we see all over the Southeast Asian countryside are massive compounds, penal colonies, where human trafficked victims make up the workforce and are forced to do this scamming for up to 16, 18 hours a day. And they're operating from scripts. They're operating from tried and true, established, psychologically manipulative ways of getting money out of people.
Like, explain to me that part a little bit more because it just sounds like a crazy, like, Liam Neeson movie or something. Like, these you say human traffic, like, these people so what you're saying, A, is that the people who are scamming me are being, essentially, like, scammed or enslaved themselves. So, I mean, it's almost difficult to be angry at them because there's a remorse element here. But what does that mean? Like, how are they being trafficked? How they're being enslaved? What does it actually look like inside some of these compounds?
Yeah, so a couple of pieces. One, I think when we hear about scamming, we assume that the person on the other side of your phone is a terrible person. It's trying to steal your money. But in fact, what's happening is frequently they are enforced criminality. So the way it works is the the crime bosses need a lot of labor to do this work. It's a lot of intense talking. Some of it's being done by AI these days, but for the most part you still need the humans to conduct conversations over time. That's how you build the trust that enables you to get people to put their money into things. And so this labor force and the great need for a lot of people has led these Chinese bosses to essentially create an entire fictitious job category. They advertise all over social media for office jobs in Bangkok, Thailand. And people from all over the world are applying for these jobs. When this first started in 2020, it was primarily Chinese people who were working inside these compounds. And then it went to more of Southeast Asia. But more and more today, the recruitment is happening in Uganda and Kenya because they speak English. So this recruitment looks like it can be ads on social media, but it can also be now countrymen on countrymen. So a Ugandan suggesting to another Ugandan that he has an amazing job for him that'll pay 10x what he's making. And that's really difficult for a 23-year-old to to look away from. And so the 23-year-old applies
And
for
when
this
the
job.
recruiter is getting some kind of, like, placement fee for bringing this guy in, does he know
Absolutely.
what he's doing?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Frequently, these recruiters are people who have come out of those scam compounds and they know exactly what they're doing. None of these recruiters really believe they're sending someone to an office job. They know that they are sending someone straight into forced criminality. And that's what makes this so distasteful because you feel like you can at least believe your fellow citizen. But in fact,
You
that's
can't
not the
trust
case.
anybody. Wow.
There's too much money in this.
So, it sounds like this is almost like, too big to fail, too big to disrupt, like, on a prosecution level, like, even if you find who the person is behind the phone, so to speak, this person isn't somebody who's probably prosecutable because they are not making, their own decisions. So, you have to go to the higher ups, those recruiters, and then even higher up. Is this like from your perspective, somebody who followed the money many times on the crypto side of things, is that what you're doing essentially? Are you following the money? Are you looking at these higher ups who are funding these compounds? Are you going after the companies or are you going after individuals? What is your I guess what's your plan here? How did you get into this? And my final question really is like, are you scared? But we'll hold off on that.
Yeah. So what I would say is that w- when we first got our first case in March of 2022, it was a software engineer who had lost all of his money, who had had every single penny stolen from him by one of these one of these scams, and his scam was a romance scam. He thought he had found the love of his life, and then she happened to be wealthy, and she happened to be wealthy from investing in cryptocurrency, and so she taught him to do that, which ended up in all of his money being stolen from him. So when you think about, well, what is your plan as a local law enforcement? Are you going after the kingpin of this compound? No. We had to think about what made sense and what we could do at that point. And at that point, the best strategy for us was to go after the money and see if we could recover the money for this victim. And we were able to do that. But when I think about what a global strategy has to be for this, we have to go after those kingpins. We have to make it more expensive, more difficult, more time consuming to do this work. And what we've seen recently is that it can be done. In October of 2025, the US government indicted Chen Zhi. He is a major kingpin in Cambodia. Now, China came in and indicted him as well, and he was extradited to China. So,
Indicted
you
him.
exactly, exactly. Anyway, brought him back to China and out of the hands of the US government. But what it did was it caused a major ripple effect, and people became scared that if Chen Zhi can be taken back to China, really anybody can. And so we have seen a lot of closing down of scam compounds in Cambodia. But the question then becomes, for how long?
Right. And could you attribute some of that success to Operation Shamrock?
What I would say is that I think everybody who is in this fight and in this fight playing hard plays a role in this.
But
That
who else is in the fight? Like you're the only person that I that I know who talks
who
about
else is
this.
in the fight? Yeah, there are. I definitely have some allies and some colleagues out there. There's Ken Westbrook, who has been talking nonstop about how we need to look at the source of this and not try and fix things on the back end. There's Brady Finta, who's working on creating better law enforcement means to fight this. But yeah, there's AARP who's done amazing job um, with the victims and just make raising awareness of this. But yeah, the fact is there are not enough voices out there. There are not enough voices relative to the size of this catastrophe and relative to how it is affecting individual humans.
So what it sounds to me is the two ways that you can go about mitigating this issue is, and both of them are really on the education side. Like you could educate governments and regulators and try and crack down both on enforcement and also on regulation. And then and that's hard. That's hard to do. But it sounds like there are quite a few people who are doing that, maybe because of your prodding. And then the other thing you could do is you could educate in the other direction. You could educate everybody essentially, because everybody's a potential victim, as to what these pitfalls might look like. I know, like, one of the things that you talked about on your previous when you previously joined us here on the show, and I have to say it was so interesting because I usually have a very specific audience type. And after my episode with you, I had like a completely diverse, diverse set of people who were coming after me, like teenagers, because I got my son to listen to it, and then he got his
Uh-huh.
friends to listen to it, and my wife and her friends, and I was like, and people were really really interested. But one of the things that you talked about was kind of these like messages you might get on WhatsApp or Telegram, like, "Oh, did I leave my umbrella by you?" And then it's like, "Oh,
Right.
sorry, I meant somebody else." And I get these all the time. Now, once upon a time, I might have thought like somebody was actually meant to write to me.
Yes.
And now, like, I screenshot them and it's like put it in like an errand folder. I said like, I got to show you this at some point. But it's really like the amount of times it's happened to me over the past 2 years, and like exactly according to the textbook, like you see that really, like, if that's what's happening to me, and I'm somebody who really, like, I never respond to these things, I have a very high threshold for bullshit. I'm sure that a lot of other people are, both getting it more and falling for it more. So definitely educating people on the streets is super 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 important, and I know that you're doing that. um Talk to me a little bit more about like what Operation Shamrock really is doing in practice.
So personally, I spend almost every waking moment trying to move awareness. I had a great opportunity last week to speak in Las Vegas to a group of casino executives, and that was an amazing different group of people because I feel like I frequently speak to the same groups of people, banking, law enforcement. And so to be able to talk to a different group of people that definitely did not understand how big this problem was and didn't understand the industrialization of it was an amazing opportunity. And I welcome more opportunities like that. But I do a lot of awareness. Operation Shamrock, in addition, does a lot of organized programs to build capacity and to eh, build capacity in law enforcement and to assist victims. So the first thing we have is our crypto coalition. We started that back in 2022 when there were just a few of us doing this kind of work, doing investigation and prosecution using the blockchain as an investigative tool. And what we found was that there are people being voluntold to be the financial crimes investigator every single day. And then there are others who choose to do it. But the fact is, there are new people every day joining this. So our crypto coalition has 2,400 active law enforcement officers who are constantly trading the latest information about what is happening on the blockchain so we can be more effective. And in addition to that, we have an in-person conference and we do monthly webinars to educate and teach about how to do this investigative work. In addition to that, we have an investigative team where we are trying to cover for the places where perhaps you live in a city in the United States where they don't have good crypto investigators. You should still be able to find someone qualified to review your case. And if you report to Operation Shamrock, you'll hear from a talented uh, learned investigator within 24 hours, and they will tell you whether or not there's anything to pursue in your case. What we were
Wow.
seeing was that victims just weren't getting heard. And so we've tried to close that gap. And that's our law enforcement piece. In addition, we have a lot of community engagement. We have a train the trainer program where we have slide decks that we will make available. We will teach you how to teach your community about this. And and we're building that community. And one of the things that we do that I'm most proud of is on Fridays we talk to victims. We do one-on-ones with victims to understand
Wow.
how is the scam landscape changing? What are they doing? What are their new tricks? And we use that information to inform industry, to inform banking, and to inform law enforcement.
And then one of the things that you've done, I've seen recently over the last few months is like you've actually gone and traveled to these scam compounds. What was that like having worked for such a long time, like more on the theoretical side of these things, like just seeing it on paper and then actually going in person and seeing firsthand what these things actually look like, meeting victims, meeting uh, perpetrators on the other side, sometimes getting close up to some of these crime bosses. Like I saw you filming them from outside their cars as they drove by. What's that like?
I know it sounds trite, but it really is jaw dropping. There is nothing like being in the same company with people who have experienced this horrific crime. There's nothing like standing on the outside of these buildings and realizing, oh my God, there's a two-story cement wall with barbed wire around the top of it. Nobody is getting in or out of this building. To see these compounds firsthand and to see really how they're only getting bigger and bigger. You know, they initially started off occupying existing hotels that were vacant, and now they have actually built cities that are for for the sole purpose of stealing all of our money. So to see that in person and to see that maybe some of them have been shut down as part of this government crackdown in Cambodia, there are others that are out in rural Cambodia that are flourishing and that are massive. So seeing that is it's hard to put into words um how genuinely frightening it is in terms of we do not have a good handle on what is happening. And as a result, people like your grandmother and my mother-in-law continue to be scammed on a daily basis.
Wow. And have you pissed anybody off? Because,
I'm
like,
sure.
you're
I'm
filming these
sure.
things and you're like, "Behind me is this scam compound." Like, either you haven't managed to, like, poke the bear enough yet, or you're just incredibly brave.
I don't know. I will say that what I am is interested in exposing how bad this is, because I think that we're not taking this seriously enough, and the longer we continue to not take it seriously, the bigger and bigger buildings that they construct over there. So, have I pissed them off? I hope so. I hope I have. I
Did
hope I've made it more difficult for them.
if I remember correctly, you have 2 boys, right?
I do. I do.
Did
They
did
are
they
in
ever get,
college.
like, pissed off with you? Are they ever like, "Mom, stop getting these Chinese crime bosses to, wait for us outside our house in a dark car?"
Right. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think for
They're
the
probably
most
proud.
part, I mean, yeah, I think for the most part they're proud, and I've been able to show them how to follow what's right, and how to find a passion even at the end of what you think the end of your career is, and to find something that really just sparks your interest. And for two young men who are about to begin their working career, I think it's been really good for them to see what passionate work can look like.
Absolutely. I know I'm proud of you and you're not my mom, so I can only I can only imagine, for your boys. Um, okay, let's talk for 1 second about, extortion, okay?
Mm,
And
mhm.
I've come across numerous, cases of people being extorted, um, and in almost every case, they end up going to a Bitcoin ATM. What
Yes.
is your thoughts on these Bitcoin ATMs? Do they have any other purpose besides people going and paying off extortionists?
No, these Bitcoin ATMs are a true scourge. They really have no legitimate purpose. And what they do is they enable Americans, or I say Americans, but non people who are not traditionally part of the scam, to become part of the scam as enablers and to profit from the scam. They know that the money moving through them is dirty, and they have made a conscious decision that they're okay with taking 30% of that dirty money every time someone puts money into that machine. And so it's a particularly despicable practice, because you didn't set out to be a criminal, ideally, if you built these machines. But now, knowing that they're only being used for criminal enterprise, and yet continuing to put them out into the world for unwitting people to put their money into, that's a special class of human
Is
that
there
is
like a
okay with that.
statistic? Is there a statistic for like what percentage of ATM crypto ATM usage is scam related?
It's probably 100%. I mean, I don't know. What
Really?
I will say, well, what I'll say is people who have come out of this industry, there are definitely people who are no longer willing to participate, and they talk about it, and they talk about, I mean, I would guess it's probably closer to 80% or something like that. It definitely is a major chunk, and I still am
Wow.
having a difficult time understanding who the people are that would be that that
Are willing to
don't.
profit
Right.
regardless.
Yeah, or who the user would be, knowing that they're losing 30% every
Is
time they
it
put a
thirty
dollar.
percent? Is that what?
It can be up to 30%.
Wow.
It can be as low as 8 to 10, but the fact is there are much easier, if you have access to the banking
Yeah, in the
system, that
United States for sure. You could just like,
yeah, there's a million ways to get money into cryptocurrency that don't involve a crypto ATM.
and is one of the ways that you're going about this, like educating people at Bitcoin ATMs, like, and I guess stopping people. It seems like a good place to go. The last line before they actually go through with whatever the extortion scam is, like that's where you could really stop them. No,
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've had a difficult time, really physically being present. We've definitely put signs on there, but I think the place that we've been most helpful and most successful is working with AARP. That's if you're not familiar with them, they're an amazing force in the United States for standing up for victims, particularly the elderly. And what they've done is they've put people on the job of how do we legislate about this, and they go state to state helping legislators understand the risk. And what we've done is we've provided law enforcement in each of these states and victim testimony from these states that has gone before congressional hearings to really help educate about what's really going on with these crypto ATMs. And so in that way we've been able to influence a lot of legislation that favors protection of consumers.
Wow. So, what would you say is like your biggest win so far?
Mm, goodness. I think my biggest win so far is uh we do our stories with victims every day. I mean on Fridays. And what we always hear is thank you so much for hearing me. I didn't feel heard. Thank you so much for um, the podcast. I listen to all the podcasts. I have a podcast called Stolen,
Yes, you do.
and
I meant that was my next thing I was going
yeah,
to
oh, okay,
talk about.
okay. Yeah,
Stolen with Erin West.
Stolen with Erin West. And on that podcast I have a variety of people, but one of the type of people I have consistently are victims of this crime. And what other victims say is that it is very meaningful to hear that they are not alone. And so every time I hear a victim come on to survivor stories on Fridays and talk to us and say, I listened to that podcast and that really helped me. Those are my wins because those are hitting individuals in a way that is positive and it's one at a time. And unfortunately, until global pressure is enough to really clamp down on these on this massive installation problem in Southeast Asia and now spreading globally, we have to look for these small wins with real people.
Beautiful. So, making people feel seen and heard. That's your biggest one. I think that's definitely a worthy one.
Yeah, and it
uh,
definitely is. I was just going to say, I think that that is the key to this whole thing. And that's why we're so susceptible to this particular crime is people aren't feeling seen and heard. So
yep.
the more, if you sit on this call and you think, gosh, I don't know what I can do about this, it's that. It's interact with people on the daily. Make eye contact with people, talk to people, make them feel seen and heard, build community because that is what's lacking. We've got a loneliness crisis that you can do something about one person at a time.
Okay. That's a great message for people looking to support Operation Shamrock. You guys survive mainly on a donation basis.
We sure do. Yep.
Okay, so and people can donate by going to the Operation Shamrock website, which I'll share together with the show notes. One thing I'd like to point out is that you don't yet have a crypto donation link available.
Oh, okay.
You got to get on that.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you for that.
I always
Yes.
say that you should make giving money the easiest you possibly can. So I
A
think
crypto
from what I saw
donation
now,
link.
it's
Yep.
like you could only give with PayPal,
That's
which
right.
is the worst payment platform in history. So if
Thank
you want
you.
people to donate, you just got
Yeah.
to get make it a bit
Make it
easier for
easier.
them.
Okay. That's my takeaway from your show today. Thank you for that. I appreciate
And
that.
there are two. I'm just going to give a plug. There are two
Yeah.
wonderful crypto giving platforms. Um, One is called InGiven, and the other one
Okay.
is called the Giving Block.
Oh, the giving
Um,
block. I've heard about that. Okay.
So InGiven has a fantastic free dashboard. So
Okay.
they're both wonderful, but that
Excellent.
one's free. So
Thank you.
highly recommend. I've worked with them both in the past, and they're both powered by wonderful people. So
Outstanding.
yeah. Another question for you. Do you ever feel frustrated by the fact that you could never change your glasses? Now that it's become part and parcel of
It's
your brand.
it's a whole thing.
Or do
It's a
you
whole
take
thing.
them off when you're off camera?
No, I love my purple glasses. I always wear purple glasses. And so I would say that sometimes it can be tricky to find the next pair of purple glasses. My original pair is my signature pair, and I'm going into the eye doctor, and I'm going to see if I can get those get
Like 10
new
more of
lenses
them?
put in. Yes, yes, I wanted to buy another pair, and they are no longer available. But yes, yes, it's a whole thing now. The purple glasses.
Well, as somebody wearing the same pair of glasses for the last 12 years, I mean, I'm on like my 18th pair, but I generally don't change
You
it
don't
up very
switch it up.
much. I could
Yeah,
relate.
yeah.
Okay, very, very cool. Okay, another question. Your motto used to be "Seize, Educate, Disrupt," and
Mhm.
you scratched the C's. I don't know
Mhm.
why,
Mhm.
but I did kind of wonder how often you do seize, and if you
Mhm.
do, what happens to those funds? Does it go back to a specific victim, or do you have like a victim's fund that you distribute these out to? And like, what would be the optimal scenario? Like, if we did manage to bring down some of these crime bosses or compounds, like, can we repatriate some of these funds and how do we get them to the right hands?
Oh, I love this question. Yes. So my original motto was educate, seize, disrupt. That I changed it to educate, mobilize, disrupt, with the idea of getting people to
Make it a more
participate.
obtainable goal.
Right. And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Because in 22 and 23, we were seizing a lot of money and getting it back in victim hands. And what we saw was criminals
And how do
pivot.
you do that? Just like
Oh, yeah. So, so the beauty of the blockchain is that it is transparent and immutable, and we can see where money goes. We don't always know who's holding it, but we can see where it is on the blockchain. So when it goes to a location where we can get a search warrant and recover it, we do that. But let's be clear, there aren't a lot of the places these go are international,
it needs to
deliberately
be an
located.
exchange or it needs to be
Yes,
on like a Tether or some other
exactly. So,
token that you could speak to the mother and father.
yes. Yes. And so that's the whole deal. So when we first started, Binance was not that cooperative, but then became very cooperative and allowed us, if we provided them with a warrant, they would return the funds. We don't have jurisdiction over them, and there are very few times where we really have jurisdiction over the exchange that is holding the crypto. And so we have to make friends and do our best to get the crypto economy to work together to understand that you don't want dirty money on your platform. So that is how we do it. We
And
find it, we
are
locate it.
exchanges
Yeah.
generally cooperative?
I would say that more now than they were, but that is still an uphill battle. And there are definitely exchanges that do not want to be helpful to American law enforcement by design. That is exactly what they're trying to not be, is cooperative to law enforcement. So it's very dependent on the willingness of exchanges to cooperate and the willingness of stablecoins like Tether and Circle to burn and reissue coins. And what we found is that it has to be a significant amount of money, and very rarely is it done on the state and local level. And so what we found is, because people weren't seizing as frequently, we wanted to
You were
motivate.
frustrating your motto.
I was frustrating my motto, and I was frustrated that we were seeing fewer seizures, and that stinks.
So now you're
And
mobilizing.
so now
So
we're
you
mobilizing.
set more obtainable goals.
Yes,
Um,
but I think another question you asked me was, what do victims do who've lost this much money, and what is a reasonable expectation? And what I'll tell you is that right now, there aren't mechanisms to get this money back short of working with law enforcement. And so I would caution them that I see your frustration and I understand your frustration, because you may not be getting the attention that you deserve, and that we still are fighting an uphill battle to get law enforcement to understand this criminality and the significance of what's happening here. Um, But that's what Operation Sharemark is all about, is educating that this is a much bigger problem than the one victim you might have met who lost $15,000. This is a targeted global enterprise with their sights set on stealing as much money as they can from the rest of the world. So that's why we need to take this seriously. And
What kind of volumes are we looking at, like, on
we're
an annual
looking at
basis?
hundreds of billions of dollars is
Wow,
being moved into the hands
wow.
of bad actors. And the problem is it's not well documented because the enemy has wisely chosen a type of crime that people are reluctant to admit happened to them. So we don't know the true scale of what's happening, but from what we do see, we see upwards of tens, hundreds of billions of dollars moving.
Wow.
That is moving directly from regular people who've worked hard to earn that money into the hands of organized criminals who are using it for ridiculous, ostentatious shows of wealth and then other nefarious activities.
And is it all going to the east, or are there, like, Western crime
A little of
bosses? I don't
both.
know. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
some of your posts that are kind of like focused on specific individuals, and some really outlandish stories. Is it
Yeah, for
all
them,
like Asians, or are there ties to Europeans, even Americans, maybe?
there's no question that pig butchering is the most lucrative crime in the history of crime. That
Wow.
there is billions upon billions to be made from this. So while it originated in Southeast Asia by organized criminals from of Chinese origin, we know that when something this good exists, other people will copy. And so we do see a lot of activity happening in the Balkan states, in the Eastern European countries. We see movement of this type of crime into Africa, and then once it gets connected with um, the Nigerian the Nigerian enterprise, it's like the Nigerian enterprise
You
on
can't stop it at
steroids.
that point.
You cannot stop it. You cannot stop it. So yes, while once I would have told you, no, this is just a Chinese crime boss situation. Oh no, my friend, we've got all kinds of different crime bosses in this now. Everybody wants a piece of this massive criminal enterprise.
Do people think you're crazy? Like, when
Um,
you meet people and they're like, "Oh, hey, Aaron, nice to meet you. What do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm trying to take down organized international crime and tens of billions of dollars in pig butchering." Are people like, "Oh, yeah, sure."
yeah,
Like,
good luck
what
with
what
that.
what
Good luck with
reaction do
that.
you get at dinner parties?
Yeah, I think a little of both, right? That certainly I chose a route late in my career to be trying to do something so massive, but I think the reaction that I do get consistently is everybody is touched by this. So basically, well, I'll get in an Uber and they'll ask me something and I'll say, "Oh, I fight scams." And so everybody can relate to I fight scams and they'll tell you their scam story and what happened to them. Everybody you meet these days has some sort of tie to this. And so then they become really interested and then that gives me the opportunity to say, "And did you know how big this is?" I think that's when people kind of like stop and pay attention and say, "Oh my God, no, I didn't." And
Yeah.
then if you have the opportunity to show them a picture, then their lives are changed by that. Then they realize, "Oh, this is way different than what I thought. This isn't the Nigerian prince. This is a massive, a massive
It's
near
it's a
nation
culture of
state
scams,
level."
yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So you've given me, and our audience, like, a wealth of information to work with, but as a parting message, what would you say is the most important thing you could leave with our listeners?
Scammers are getting more and more clever. And they even get me sometimes where they will send a text and say, um, meant to get back to you, or something where you think like, oh, it's totally possible that I met this person at a conference and don't have them in my phone yet. So what we need to do is we need to operate at a level of you are a detective 24/7 and you need to assume that any any electronic communication that you did not request is a scam until proven otherwise. And so that has to be your attitude when you're on your computer, when you're on your phone is, I'm going to be scammed 5 times today. Let me see if I can find those 5 attempts. And then we aren't surprised by it. And then we aren't taken advantage of by really clever scammers.
So you have to be basically paranoid.
You have to be basically paranoid. And I don't know if it's paranoia when it's legit, when they really
Yeah,
are coming for
true.
you. Yeah.
That's true. Okay, wow. Erin, thank you so much. For all of our listeners out there, Erin is fighting for a very, very worthy cause. Please do whatever you can to support Operation Shamrock. Give her podcast, Stolen, a listen. It is definitely worth your while, and spread the good word. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining me today. Looking forward to having you on again in another 60 episodes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Code. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and to tune in again next week for more fun and insightful conversation.